Like, here, have a bunch of happy, cuddly chemicals no matter what's happening. Then exploring regulatory protocols affected by thesis number 29. And the most profound and incredible and life-changing, transformative, wondrous, shocking, surprising, incredible. Right? The first regulatory protocol that I'm too excited. Stop it. So my consciousness has never changed. I still have all of the exact same parts of my self-essence that I did when Kristen was living with adaptable consciousness condition and had over 20 different people in this brain and body. And so that's my favorite thing about this concept, is that the power is so expansive. It doesn't matter who or where you are. There are potential benefits for deep transformation. Because the causality of stress isn't the situation. The causality of stress is how our brain and our body are reacting to the situation. But as consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments creates brand new regulatory protocols. Can you believe that? It's crazy. It's so incredible. So consciousness is up here just applying this idea and teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with its own being beyond all awareness. The brain and the body are like, okay, I'm taking notes. Okay, we got a new regulatory protocol on the respiratory system. We got a new regulatory protocol about oxygen flow. There's a new regulatory protocol that's going to improve the regulation of the heart that is beating. There's all of this stuff happening beyond awareness. And the process of that is fun and enjoyable and easy and tangible and so practical. And it's just genuinely an enjoyable journey. Self-essence never changes anything about itself. Yet it experiences greater depths of liberation.
Welcome, beloved soul friends,
to a brand new adventure into the known documentary series and Implicit Revelations case study created by yours truly, Kristin Windsor, Consciousness Consultant. I invite you to play background music while listening to and watching the following video. Choose some relaxing tunes and play them quietly in the background to amplify your healing journey experience. Have an incredible adventure diving deep into understanding and healing unconscious body minds to liberate self-essence and transform personal experience from the inside out. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being you. Hey soul friends, I'm super stoked that you're here exploring this. Before diving into part 6 of thesis number 29, I highly encourage exploring the first 5 videos that discuss thesis number 29. This video here is part 6, and there will be a lot more power in exploring this if you've looked at the first 5 videos first. So I highly encourage you to explore those videos before diving into this one, and you can discover more in the video description below. Namaste, soul friends. The divine love and light in my consciousness sees and honors the divine love and light in your consciousness. Blessings to every part of you. When consciousness teaches the brain and body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments indirectly reprograms brain-body systems. So there's all these different regulatory protocols wiring in the deepest regions of the unconscious body-mind, and it automatically affects all the different energetic flows throughout the brain-body system far, 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 far beyond awareness. And in the process of applying thesis number 29 from the Implicit Revelations case study, the entire brain-body system gets a reboot. All of the different regulatory protocols start to improve and heal and become restored and expand into a greater sense of thrival and well-being. Attachment systems bridge worlds between the unconscious mind, which provides navigation regarding self and life, or personal identity, and how that sense of self navigates and interprets reality instinctively. Attachment systems bridge worlds between the unconscious mind providing navigation and the unconscious body, which affects regulation. And so the deepest regions of the unconscious body and the regions of the unconscious mind, those worlds are bridged through attachment systems. How implicit memories affect navigation, how regulatory protocols affect brain-body activity, and how implicit memories affect regulation, and how regulation affects neural activity and processing. All of that directly depends on the well-being of internal attachment systems. This references theses number 2 and 3 from this Implicit Revelations case study, and also briefly touches on the Pyramid of Personhood, which Kristin created several years ago. And you can download an older copy of the Pyramid of Personhood from my free gifts through Kristin's Consciousness Consultancy at kristinwindsor.com/gifts. And while you're on the website, please be sure to check out theses number 2 and 3, which provides further insight on these topics. Explore the complete Implicit Revelations case study collection at kristinwindsor.com/known. The Implicit Revelations case study has been genuinely the most unfathomably remarkable and astoundingly profound journey of a lifetime. Kristin began this case study several years ago, and if you've watched part 1 of the known documentary series, you'll notice that there's been just a little bit of transformation over the past few years. The entire structures of this brain and body are completely different than they were a few years ago. And Kristin began cultivating and applying the concepts that I'm now sharing here in thesis number 29, KRISTIN began creating and nurturing and embodying those ideas back in 2018. And the journey from 2018 to who and where I am today in 2022, the key component of that transformation, healing, restoration, and expansion directly stems from consistent application of these ideas, where consciousness teaches the brain and body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments. When KRISTIN started creating and applying these ideas in 2018, she was living with adaptable consciousness condition, where there was over 20 different people inside of this brain and body. And none of them had complete connection with the body because of chronic severe dissociation. And so back then, there were different people in this brain and body, and the different states of consciousness learned how to socially engage with themselves, even without connection with the body. While living with adaptable consciousness condition, applying thesis number 29 helped break down amnesic barriers so that states of consciousness had improved communication with one another, gaining co-consciousness with each other, and having a greater ability to communicate, collaborate, and connect as consciousness experienced automated brain-body activity. Because remember, consciousness is a distinct energetic component from neurobiological applications. And so how self-essence instinctively experiences a sense of self and automated interpretations of reality directly depends on how the brain and body are wired. And so my consciousness has never changed. I still have all of the exact same parts of my self-essence that I did when KRISTIN was living with adaptable consciousness condition and had over 20 different people in this brain and body. Every single part of my consciousness is still here exactly the same as it's always been. But the brain and the body, the wiring, the structures of the neurobiological social engagement system comprising the unconscious body-mind, all of that neural data has been completely transformed. And that's why my consciousness experiences life very differently now than it did several years ago. But while KRISTIN was living with adaptable consciousness condition, applying thesis number 29 helped break down amnesic barriers so different states of consciousness had a greater ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate. Simultaneously, it was helping to regulate the brain and body, to decrease stress responses, increase prefrontal cortex engagement, etc., gradually improving health and qualities of life. In 2020, KRISTIN was gradually starting to experience life through one state of consciousness. It was very, 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 very gradual, though. It was multiple states of consciousness for most of 2020, but without any amnesic barriers for the very first time. And there was still healing from chronic dissociative age regression as the brain and the body completed its final stages of neurodevelopment after fully processing all associated trauma responses and core neural wiring. During 2020, as consciousness taught the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, these processes helped to bridge the disconnect between brain hemispheres, the mind and the body, and the different states of consciousness, further improving the health of the brain-body system and the connectivity of consciousness. And then in 2021, as consciousness taught the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, I was able to recover memories from my entire life, completely healing several forms of chronic amnesia. And so thesis number 29 has provided so many different styles of healing throughout so many different seasons of life. KRISTIN was a completely different person in 2018. A totally different person in 2019, a totally different person in 2020, a totally different person in 2021. And here I am in 2022, and I feel like myself, which I can't articulate how amazing it feels. It's a very indescribable feeling. I feel like I'm me. I feel like I'm me. I feel like I got all of me back when Kristen didn't know that she could ever feel like herself again. And so the application of thesis number 29 has provided so many different types of healing, transformation through so many different seasons. And so that's my favorite thing about this concept, is that the power is so expansive. It doesn't matter who or where you are. There are potential benefits for deep transformation. Like deep transformation, whether someone's struggling with chronic stress responses, anxiety, depression, dissociation, chronic bouts of rage or anger, whether you just desire a greater ability for concentration or deeper sleep at night. Like, it doesn't matter who or where you are along the healing journey. Thesis number 29 has so much power to ignite profound healing in so many different types of ways, and that's why I'm so excited to share this. And if you'd like to explore more about my Implicit Revelations case study or personal healing journey, I have an expansive library collection available through Patreon that shares hundreds and thousands of pieces of content from 2018 to 2021. So please feel free to explore that if these topics interest you. First regulatory protocol that encounters total transformation from consistent application of thesis number 29 is brainwave regulation. Brainwave regulation. Brainwave regulation is so incredible and so miraculous and so astounding, and affects us in so many different ways that we don't necessarily think about. If our brainwaves are vibrating too slowly, then we might feel like we're sleepwalking and everything's just kind of surreal and dreamy-like, and we kind of feel like we're in a dream and can't totally wake up to reality. Or maybe our inner reality feels more real than our outer reality. And then if our brainwaves are vibrating too fast, then we might have racing thoughts or intrusive thoughts, or feel anxious, or just feel scatterbrained, or we're over here, or we're over there. There might even be sensations of mania. So brainwave regulation really affects how our inner world operates within itself, and how that inner world can connect and communicate with the outer world. And so it's like really important to have regulated brainwaves. Regulated brainwaves help us function and flow fluidly and smoothly. It helps to manage our thoughts, so we're able to have thoughts that can help guide us through our moments, but we're not being bombarded by thoughts, or our thoughts aren't distracting us from realities. If our brainwaves are going too slow, then our thoughts might be this inner world that doesn't connect with the outer world, where there's all this inner talk, kind of like you're in your own daydream, but you can't really fully connect with reality as it unfolds. And if the brainwaves are going too fast, and there's going to be too many thoughts, and you can't function with anything because it's just a bombarding collage of never-ending streams of thoughts that keep interrupting each other. So brainwave regulation is super, mega, ultra important. And I've discovered through the Implicit Revelations case study that when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, and there are daily practices created that apply this idea specifically, then the brain waves actually undergo a reconstructive process regarding their automated regulation. Brainwaves can learn to self-regulate to a greater degree of health and thrival through consistent application of thesis number 29. The second regulatory protocol that undergoes total transformation in the coolest way are digestive processes. When we eat food, there's like a quadrillion, bajadrillion things that happen. We have to have effective sensations of hunger and appetite to even know that we want or need food. And then there's the ability to taste and enjoy and be present. If we're not fully present, we won't be able to fully taste our food. And that can actually disrupt digestive processes because we're not in a totally relaxed state to encourage that rest and digest process. And then once the food goes down, it goes through all these complex processes to be effectively digested. And if that stuff ain't working super good, then we won't fully get the nutrients we need to have all the awesome energy we need to thrive to our maximum capacity. And all this other stuff could happen. So digestion is like clearly very important. You know, we eat food in the day, at least once a day, usually. And that affects how we're able to think and our energy levels and all kinds of stuff, all different aspects of health. So 2.5 years ago, Kristin would lose consciousness every single time that she ate food because of a severe dorsal vagal collapse. Core childhood trauma was associated with a dorsal vagal collapse that was activated every time Kristin ate food. And so she would eat food and boom, severe oxygen deprivation, boom, disconnect between reality, boom, all these trauma responses, boom, struggling to have digestion flow at all. Dorsal vagal collapse limits the body's ability to effectively digest food. And so Kristin was experiencing this every single day for several years. And this was just a couple years ago. 2-3 years ago, this was happening on a daily basis. And now I can eat food and every single bite is so magically heavenly. Everything is totally regulated. My digestive processes work better than they ever have in my entire life. And that has been transformed through the daily application of thesis number 29. As consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, regulatory protocols are totally transformed. And so my digestive systems are totally different. Literally, the physiology of how digestion happens is different because of daily application of thesis number 29. So when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, the consistent application of these processes reconstruct the regulatory protocols that determine how the brain and the body automatically flow through various aspects of digestion or taking in food and making the most of its potentials for health benefits. In addition, how the brain and the body instinctively know how to communicate sensations of hunger and appetite are improved. There's a greater ability for the body to say, hey, I'm hungry, and then for the mind to perceive, oh, I have an appetite. If these processes aren't occurring effectively, then there might be sensations of hunger without an appetite, where you need food, but you can't really eat food. Or you might have an appetite but no hunger. Your body doesn't need food, but you feel like eating food all of the time. And so when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments helps reconstruct regulatory protocols so that the brain and the body can effectively communicate sensations of hunger and appetite. The body knows when it actually needs food and is able to communicate that so the mind actually wants food. And along with this, in this process, there's a greater ability for instinctive food management or intuitive eating. And so some days we need different things. For example, some days I have one big meal. Some days I'll have 3 small meals. Some days I do intermittent fasting. Because my body communicates what it needs when it needs it. And so instead of just having these set meal times, I'm able to flow and my body can communicate what it needs when she needs it. Without this instinctive mind-body connection and effective communication throughout these complex systems, there might be instances where we eat just because it's time to eat, but maybe we don't actually need food. Or we keep eating long after the body has enough food simply because we're enjoying the food that we're eating, not necessarily because our body needs it. Our body had enough food, but the communication wasn't effectively there, and so we kept eating, not knowing how full we actually were. There might be times where you really, really want a snack, but the desire to eat food isn't because you need food, and it's actually coming from some other communication in the system. There's some misfire, and it's like, oh, I'm actually thirsty, or I'm actually tired, or oh, I really need a hug, but the communication wasn't effective, so the body's like, just give me a snack. And so there's all these different things that can happen where we're not completely attuned with what our body actually needs in terms of hunger and food. And to have the effectiveness of hunger and appetite fully balanced, it can really help create some healing change and allow the mind of our conscious awareness to be connected with the needs of our unconscious body, so that self-essence has more power to effectively be there for the brain and the body in the way that they actually need, and not necessarily in the way that maybe we've learned or developed habits with over the years. As the mind connects with the body and is able to effectively sense hunger and appetite more effectively, there's also a greater capacity to choose the direction of food. And so instead of just instinctively, automatically eating whatever you eat whenever you eat it, consciousness actually expands its power to choose more consciously what to eat, when to eat it, and how to eat it. And this can totally change the game of the healing journey through life, because how we eat, what we eat, when we eat it, why we eat it, affects a lot of different things, including energy levels, including our vitality and our passion and our ability to feel regulated emotions even. A lot of this is affected by how, what, when, and why we eat. And when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments improves these regulatory protocols so that consciousness has more power to effectively be there for the brain and the body, as there's more effective communication regarding digestion and needs of hunger and appetite. The third regulatory protocol that encounters profound transformation is the regulation of hormones and neurotransmitters. And this affects hunger and appetite, which we just talked about, but it affects so many other things as well. So when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing, healing, and restoring internal attachments totally reprograms the endocrine system and anything and everything affecting the regulation, release, and activity of hormones and neurotransmitters. A few years ago, when Kristen was living with adaptable consciousness condition, her different states of consciousness each had their own unique style of hormones and neurotransmitters.
Yeah, we all have different hormones.
Well, we all have the same hormone.
No, me and my parts
I see.
experience different hormones. We figured that.
They were literally different people in this brain and body, and each state of consciousness encountered their own unique regulatory protocol of hormones and neurotransmitters. This state of consciousness and this state of consciousness did not experience the same styles of automated endocrine regulation. And you can explore more about adaptable consciousness condition in thesis number 10 of my Implicit Revelations case study. So that was where the exploration of the endocrine system, hormones, neurotransmitters, and the application of thesis number 29 began. Hormones and neurotransmitters affect a lot of different processes in the brain and the body, and a lot of different aspects regarding how we instinctively encounter emotions and sensations inside of us. One of the coolest features of applying thesis number 29 is how it can super mega powerfully stimulate super feel good hormones and neurotransmitters. Among the infinite potentials, there's a major oxytocin release, and everything inside of the brain and the body gets to feel super cuddly. It's the best way I could describe it. It's like the entire brain and body are getting little hugs inside of them. It's so profound, and it feels amazing, and it's so powerful. And not only does it ignite an oxytocin release during the present moment process of applying thesis number 29, but as you continue applying it consistently, it reprograms the brain and the body to transform the endocrine system, so there's greater regulation of hormones and neurotransmitters in the future. So even when you're not immediately in the moment of applying thesis number 29, if there's been this consistent application, then the endocrine system has a transformed sense of regulatory protocols and how it instinctively activates, releases, and flows different hormones and neurotransmitters will be improved to affect future experiences, even in moments where you're not directly applying the concept. It can majorly help reduce stress. And this takes so many different forms. One basic example is a road rage style scenario. If someone's driving and they're stuck in traffic, the sensations of tension and frustration and anxiety and anger and impatience, a lot of that is affected by the regulation of hormones and neurotransmitters. If the brain and the body are in a state of serotonin and oxytocin, you're not going to care if you're stuck in traffic because you're feeling good. The process of reconstructing regulatory protocols in relation with the endocrine system and hormones and neurotransmitters helps reduce stress levels in all types of scenarios. All types. Because how we instinctively encounter life depends on how consciousness is experiencing brain-body wiring. And if the endocrine system is reconstructed and has different regulatory protocols that have all these happy chemicals and lower levels of any stress chemicals, then if we instinctively encounter a stressful situation, there's going to be less stress. Because the causality of stress isn't the situation. The causality of stress is how our brain and our body are reacting to the situation. So if our endocrine system is reprogrammed and we get in a stressful moment, then we're not going to feel so stressed because the stress chemicals aren't going off. And so when we apply thesis number 29, we can actually help to reconstruct regulatory protocols affecting automated hormone and neurotransmitter activity and reduce stress levels in all types of scenarios. And so if someone's living with chronic stress responses where there's just like anxiety, terror, fear, rage, then it's going to help to bring those levels down. And if someone's not encountering chronic stress responses, then it's going to still have this great foundational programming. So if there is any kind of stressful scenario, there won't be stress involved because stress doesn't come from situations. It comes from brain-body activity. And so if we can reprogram the brain and the body so that the endocrine system is like, here, have a bunch of happy, cuddly chemicals no matter what's happening, then life is going to be like super magical and not stressful. And so among the infinite benefits, the third regulatory protocol that encounters total transformation is activity of hormones and neurotransmitters, especially through the endocrine system. And if that's reconstructed, it's going to improve happiness and sensations of love and connection, especially through oxytocin and serotonin release. And it's going to reduce stress by regulating those different stress chemicals that might go off, whether they're triggered by situations or whether they're just being regularly activated because that's what the regulatory protocol says to do right now. And so reprogramming the endocrine system through consistent application of thesis number 29 can profoundly improve quality of life and health on so many different levels. Along these lines, applying thesis number 29 totally transforms regulatory protocols of circadian rhythms, including melatonin production and all the different many various components that affect circadian rhythms. How our body knows to be tired and go to sleep at night, have an ability to fall asleep easily, quickly, peacefully, smoothly, and have an ability to stay asleep in a certain state of depth of sleep. Like you could be a light sleeper and you maybe stay asleep, but you didn't get into the deeper sleep states. So your brain and body didn't have a chance to be restored to the capacity that it's intended to experience and acquire while sleeping. And so the body's ability to get into that super deep sleep state and stay there for many hours. And then the ability to wake up and have a sense of energy. There's so many different components here. There's so many different components that affect sleep. And then, of course, sleep affects energy during the rest of the day. And how energy's accessed and used during the day affects the next night's sleep. So there's all this different stuff that goes on, right? And so circadian rhythms are this very complex thing with all these different features. But I've discovered that when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments transforms circadian rhythms. The brain and the body naturally learn to fall asleep peacefully, to stay asleep peacefully, to reach the deepest depths of sleep states, and wake up with a sense of rested orientation. Instead of like waking up with lethargy and you're just like, nah, I just want to lay in bed all day, I don't have any energy, I want to stay asleep. Or you wake up in a state of anxiety, like, oh my God, I have all this energy, now I'm ready to go, like a wired state. You wake up in this calm, peaceful, rested state where you have energy accessible, but it's not an overly energized thing right away. You can ease into the day. And so all of these different components of circadian rhythms, and then having energy through the day and not needing to rest during the day, and yet being able to have moments of peace during the day. Okay, so circadian rhythm goes, and during the day, if you get really, really tired, nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with naps by any means. But circadian rhythms affect that energy level. And I've discovered that when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments, when applied on a consistent basis, transforms the circadian rhythms so that the body has more consistent regulated energy during the day. It's so profound. It's genuinely incredible. And so there's less need for naps or sleep, but there's also less anxious, angsty energy. Like you're not just wired all day, but you're not tired all day. It's this very regulated energy during the day. And so the quantity and the quality of sleep and how sleep impacts energy levels, all of these components of the circadian rhythm are improved and the regulatory protocols restored and expanded through consistent application of thesis number 29. A surprising discovery was that applying thesis number 29 can actually improve brain hemispheric connectivity. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments expands energetic communication between the brain hemispheres, further igniting potential capabilities of the corpus callosum. So there's all this stuff going on in the right brain, there's all this stuff going on in the left brain, and then there's all this stuff going on in the bridge between the brain hemispheres, the corpus callosum. And if stuff isn't flowing well here, or stuff isn't flowing well here, or stuff isn't flowing well here, then the brain hemispheres will have a difficult time effectively contributing to automated conversations of consciousness, which profoundly impacts personal experience, to say the least. 2 years ago, there was so much disconnectivity and independent activity between my brain hemispheres that they were experienced by completely different persons inside of this brain and body, which created some miraculously unique experiences. During original stages of neurodevelopment, life primarily happens through the right brain hemisphere, and the left brain hemisphere gradually develops, and then they start to learn how to connect through a very gradual process. And a big component that affects this aspect of brain development is attachment development. Nature and nurture collide, and the abstract brain-body blueprint is sculpted and shaped through experiences of love, especially from parent-child bonding, which is the foundation of the neurobiological social engagement system. And so how the two brain hemispheres originally learn to communicate through the original stages of neurodevelopment directly depend on attachment development. Thus, when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments helps reprogram automated regulation of brain hemispheric connectivity. 2 years ago, there was so much independent activity. When I would look at clouds, that experience happened in my right brain hemisphere without any connection to my left brain hemisphere. The experience of looking at the sky is different now than it was 2 years ago. Hugely. Because of the regular application of thesis number 29. It's incredible. The two brain hemispheres originally learned to communicate through attachment development. And now, no matter who we are or where we're at in life, whether someone is 20 years old, 50 years old, 80 years old, or anywhere in between or beyond, regardless of who or where we are, when the essence of self, which is consciousness, teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, that process indirectly and automatically helps to expand regulatory protocols to improve brain hemispheric connectivity. So you don't have to go in and directly work with the brain hemispheres to help improve how they communicate. Granted, there are a lot of different ways to improve brain hemispheric connectivity directly. For example, there's a specific mirror practice that my doctor was able to apply that was traditionally used on stroke patients. And when Kristen had severe independent brain hemispheric connectivity, that was something that helped that healing journey. So there are other ways to expand brain hemispheric connectivity that are more direct regarding that immediate regulatory protocol. But the application of thesis number 29 does indirectly assist that process. It might be subtle, it might be minor, it might be gradual, whereas other treatments that specifically focus on brain hemispheric connectivity are going to have more immediate cutthroat results. But regardless of here where we are, we could always use better communication between our brain hemispheres. That always improves the quality of life and our ability to experience the fullness of all that we are and all that life is intended to be. And so when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments indirectly improves brain hemispheric communication. The brain hemispheres have a greater capacity to operate within themselves and connect through the corpus callosum. The sixth regulatory protocol that encounters profound transformation is connectivity between the forebrain and hindbrain, specifically improving mind-body connection. How the sensations of a conscious mind are able to connect, communicate, and collaborate with a variety of components of the unconscious body depends on how these regions of the brain are operating within itself. And so 2 years ago, there was zero, I'm talking zero, a big fat giant zero connection between this mind and body, which affected hundreds of components of personal experience. But as consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments creates brand new regulatory protocols so that the mind and the body have an ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate. And among the details of this are improved connectivity between front parts of the brain and back parts of the brain, basically the forebrain and the hindbrain. Stuff that's a little bit closer to the conscious mind and stuff that's a little bit closer to the unconscious body, and how they bridge worlds and communicate. In relation with my 5 layers model and diagram, encouraging connectivity between the forebrain and the hindbrain, or the mind and the body, also encourages connectivity between the observational self and the inner life partner, and the inner child and the deepest regions of the unconscious body-mind. Mind-body connectivity is like a whole other topic that could go on for a bajillion years. It affects everything from our ability to connect with our physical needs, hunger, thirst, sleep, energy, needing to use the restroom, a million different things about just basic bodily needs, to abilities to engage specific muscles. If you're trying to do a certain workout or exercise, the ability to consciously connect and engage certain muscles in certain ways at different times. All of these things depend on mind-body connectivity, or abilities for the conscious awareness in front parts of the brain to connect with all the different other components of the brain and body to communicate. And these regulatory protocols are improved indirectly, even if you don't specifically focus on mind-body connection. That experiences indirect healing, restoration, and improved expansive transformation when applying these ideas effectively and consistently. While we're talking about the front parts of the brain, let's explore the effects of this idea on the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is awesome. That part of our brain is like so magical and wonderful and helps do all kinds of things. Like, I couldn't be standing here talking the way that I am if my prefrontal cortex wasn't telling me some super cool stuff unconsciously. Our prefrontal cortex is very important. The front parts of our brain are very important. And in association with them, there's also the mohawk of self-awareness, these regions kind of in the middle-ish parts of our brain. This references work by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. There's the mohawk of self-awareness and the prefrontal cortex and the frontal parts of our brain. And these help with so many different things. They help us to be present. They help us to be mindful. They help us have power to make conscious choices rather than choices being directly dependent on unconscious activity of implicit procedural memories unfolding beyond awareness. Activity in these parts of our brain helps us be aware and engaged and have a sense of personal presence with our own self and with whatever we're experiencing. It helps us concentrate and focus and have abilities to choose how we're engaging in ourselves and our lives. It expands the gap between stimulus and response. It provides sensations of awareness that help life be the fullness and magic and expansive quality that it's intended to be. And when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, the regulatory protocols affecting the prefrontal cortex, different aspects of the front parts of the brain, and the mohawk of self-awareness, all of these different aspects of brain activity are improved and expanded indirectly, automatically, and gradually. Which is cool because it means there's no limit to the potential. Like, even if the brain's like already kind of doing pretty good or whatever, like there's still room for expansion. And thesis number 29 provides that. And so no matter who we are or where we're at in our lives, we can always use more effective activity of our prefrontal cortex. We can always use an amplification of the health and well-being of our mohawk of self-awareness. It always can expand life to even further capacities of greatness and wholeness and vitality and just the incredible juiciness that life is intended to be. And so regardless of whether someone's struggling with chronic traumatic stress where there's total deactivation of these regions of the brain on a regular basis, or whether someone is just wanting to increase their abilities for concentration or focused flow or the ability to just feel more deeply in the sensations of life. Regardless of who or where we're at, there are potential benefits when consistently and effectively applying these ideas. It expands and improves the regulatory protocols affecting the prefrontal cortex, front parts of the brain, and the mohawk of self-awareness. Exploring regulatory protocols affected by thesis number 29. Number 8. You guys ready for this? This is a big one. It touches on so many different systems. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments gradually, miraculously, expansively, wondrously, cosmically, magically, wondrously, expansively improves the regulatory protocols within and throughout all the different systems. The somatic, enteric, autonomic, central nervous systems, the endocrine, respiratory, digestive, immune, and inflammatory systems, and maybe even some other systems they didn't stick in there, but those ones for sure are positively affected by the consistent and effective application of thesis number 29. How the central nervous system communicates within itself. How the somatic nervous system communicates with itself. How the autonomic nervous system communicates within itself. How these systems communicate with each other. How the immune and inflammatory systems operate. Can you believe that? It's crazy. It's so incredible. The immune system improves its health and well-being. The inflammatory system. So if you get like a bug bite, for example, and it gets super mega flared and like swells up all big and stuff, that's affected by the inflammatory system. But through consistent and effective application of thesis number 29, the inflammatory system and immune system and related systems actually get new regulatory protocols. And then when you get a bug bite, it doesn't swell up quite as bad as it used to. Among the infinite potentials of what may unfold and how these effects might personally manifest. The respiratory system, all these different systems, the autonomic system, how the body breathes in oxygen and flows the oxygen through all of the different systems is positively affected with improved regulatory protocols through the consistent and effective application of thesis number 29. It's incredible how the brain and body instinctively know how to gather oxygen from the surrounding invisible atmosphere and flow this mystical thing through the brain and the body to effectively convey this life-giving energy to all the different components of the miracle of this vessel. All of that is indirectly and unconsciously impacted when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself. So consciousness is up here just applying this idea and teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with its own being beyond all awareness. The brain and the body are like, okay, I'm taking notes. Okay, we got a new regulatory protocol on the respiratory system. We got a new regulatory protocol about oxygen flow. There's a new regulatory protocol that's going to improve the regulation of the heart that is beating. There's all of this stuff happening beyond awareness. Like, you can't go in and be like, hey, heart, can you beat a little slower? You're beating too fast and your heart rate is giving me anxiety right now. Like, you can't just, like, consciously go in there and be like, here, heartbeat, have a new regulatory protocol. And yet, through consistent and effective application of thesis number 29, that can totally happen. The heart can gain a new regulatory protocol about how to beat, which can help heal underlying causalities of tachycardia and bradycardia, while expanding health and well-being for anybody, even if they're not experiencing tachycardia or bradycardia. the regulatory protocol that tells the heart how to beat, how to flow blood, how to breathe in and flow oxygen. All of these systems experience improved regulation through the consistent and effective application of thesis number 29. So the immune system, inflammatory system, digestive system, respiratory system, all of these different systems carry regulatory protocols that affect our health, well-being, thrival, quality, and experience of self and life beyond awareness. And all of these regulatory protocols are uplifted indirectly, without directly addressing brain-body regulation. All of these different regulatory protocols are improved when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments. As the somatic, autonomic, and central nervous system improve their regulatory protocols to increase communication within each system and throughout the systems, between all the systems, among the infinite benefits is an increase and improvement of sensory processing. The vividness of sensory data actually improves, which profoundly expands uniquely individualized experiences of consciousness. Colors can actually become brighter. Foods can actually taste better. Sensory processing becomes more vivid as these nervous systems start to experience an expansion and improvement of their regulatory protocols. And there's lots of different ways to increase health of these nervous systems. But without directly working with any of the nervous systems, this is one of the most profound and incredible and impactful ways to affect the systems indirectly. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, all these different nervous systems start to communicate more effectively. And among the infinite benefits is an improvement of sensory processing. And this holds infinite potentials for anyone along any type of healing journey through life. When Kristen was experiencing severe dissociation, she couldn't feel someone touching her skin. She couldn't feel anything on her skin most of the time. And then other times, she felt all these terrifying, uncomfortable, painful sensations on her skin when nothing was touching her, because of how all this misfire was happening. And so there was like really reduced effectiveness of sensory processing, to say the least. And that's just one of the senses. She couldn't taste food effectively. She couldn't smell things effectively. She couldn't hear things effectively. She couldn't see things effectively. And I explore these ideas in previous theses, statements, and analyses, including thesis number 27, where I explore specific, unique manifestations of dissociation. So please feel free to explore other miraculous wonders of this Implicit Revelations case study. But there was all this disruption in sensory processing. And so not only was Kristen able to recover all of that ability, but now everything is so vivid. Colors are so bright. There's so much detailed dynamic depth to sensory processing. And so as all these different nervous systems start to communicate more effectively, one of the infinite benefits is that there is an improvement in sensory processing. And this can improve the quality of life for anyone along any type of healing journey. As communication and connectivity within and throughout all these different systems improves and expands, the greatest benefit is an increase in autonomic nervous system regulation. The way that our autonomic nervous system instinctively, automatically, unconsciously regulates its own existence affects us in so many ways, like so many ways. And then autonomic regulation affects all these other different systems in very profound ways, including digestion. And so when we improve autonomic nervous system regulation, it improves so many other components of our personal realities, both within and beyond awareness. Among the infinite potential benefits here is healing underlying causalities of stress responses. If someone's encountering chronic fight, flight, fold, or freeze stress responses, then the process of applying thesis number 29 can help transform those regulatory protocols even without directly working with them. You don't have to dive into the fight stress response or the flight stress response to help heal it. And this holds a lot of power, because sometimes if we try to dive into the stress response, we just expand the stress response without meaning to. Because what you focus on grows. And so if you're focused on the stress response might grow without realizing it, without intending to. But if we focus on effective healing routes, then this stuff can heal without touching it. And so among the infinite potential benefits is healing underlying causalities of stress responses, which can help heal a variety of different implicit health challenges, including chronic traumatic stress. Even for those who are not struggling with any type of stress response, we can all use an increased regulation within the autonomic nervous system. And helping to reprogram the autonomic nervous system doesn't just expand our health now, but allowing for different regulatory protocols to exist in the unconsciousness can provide greater health and well-being down all regions of life. There might be a future scenario where a stress response might have been created if the nervous system wasn't super regulated. There might be some small or major incident in life that creates a stress response, and then that impacts life. But that is less likely to happen, regardless of what happens in life, if the autonomic nervous system is super grounded and very regulated on a daily basis. And so we can all use an expansion of regulation and health and well-being in the autonomic nervous system, and consistent and effective application of thesis number 29 provides tools to do that even without directly working with the autonomic nervous system. As all these different systems improve their communication and connection, their health, their well-being, and their automated styles of regulation, another of the infinite potential benefits is an increase and improvement in body temperature and circulation. The ability for our body to feel comfortable in its own regulated temperature is affected as consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself. Isn't this so fascinating? I think it's so intriguing. And the way that circulation naturally flows is improved indirectly, gradually, beyond awareness, when effectively and consistently applying these ideas. While I've personally experienced the long-term benefits of this increased improvement of body temperature regulation and circulation, the long-term benefits where there's now deep regulation because of daily work for many years, I've also experienced short-term immediate benefits of this. For example, I experimented with a variation of the cold plunge challenge. And on the days where I just focused on being in the experience of being in very, 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 very cold water for a little while and then getting out of the water, there was severe dysregulation of body temperature, and I was shivering for hours. It took me so long to get warm afterwards. I could not get warm for the life of me. My body was like, I'm cold and I don't know how to come back from it. But then, to experiment with my case study, I applied Thesis 29, and instead of just being in the water as the experiential self experiencing cold water, I practiced being the observational self who was spending time with my experiential self while she was in the cold water. And I had a mirror by the water that I was in, and instead of focusing on the water that I was in, I was focused on connecting with my consciousness in the mirror. And I laughed, and I hung out, and I yawned a bunch because my autonomic nervous system was relaxing through the application of these ideas. And in this process of practicing loving presence and connection, distinction and connection between self aspects, my consciousness was teaching my brain and body to socially engage with itself, spending time in this mirror while in the cold water. And when I got out of that water, same temperature of water, there was zero shivering. My body almost instinctively, automatically was able to get warm. And there was a little bit of shivering here and there, but I got warm within like 5 minutes instead of like 2 hours, which is what happened before. And so I've experienced the long-term benefits of this. Kristen used to have very severe dysregulation of body temperature and circulation several years ago, and now it's super regulated. So I've experienced the long-term benefits where daily application changed the way that I instinctively experience it now, but I've also experienced the short-term immediate effects, which was noticeable, for example, in this variation of a cold plunge challenge where I was in cold water for an extended period of time for health benefits. And my body was able to stay warm in the water and get warm after being out of the water much more effectively when consciousness was focusing on teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, compared to not applying that idea directly. The body had a much harder time staying warm and regulated in the water and after getting out of the water. So among the infinite potentials, as all these different systems encounter a transformation of the regulatory protocols, there could be potentially an improvement in the automated regulation of body temperature and circulation. Another of the infinite potentials that may unfold is a reduction in the severity and intensity of pain, or improved pain management. When there's a lot of pain, it's easy to slip into a state of misattunement and be the experiential self focused on the pain. That's kind of just what happens automatically. But when there's distinction and connection between self aspects, and the focus is on teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with itself while nurturing internal attachments, then that redirection of internal energy can help reduce the focus of the pain. It doesn't necessarily mean that the pain goes away, but the way that the pain is generating an experience in the moment might be reduced. The noise or the sound or the feeling of the pain might be less loud, if you will. And then this other direction of internal energy can become louder than the pain. And so among the infinite potential benefits is that if there is any experience of uncomfortability or pain, whether it's temporary or a chronic scenario, temporary being like a bee sting or you stub your toe or something's going on that's a one-time thing. Chronic being some kind of issue that has been happening, continues to happen to provoke painful sensations of some kind in the body. Whether it's short-term or long-term, temporary or consistent and chronic pain that is arising, the application of thesis number 29 can potentially reduce the intensity and severity of pain. It doesn't make the pain totally go away, not completely, but it can turn down the volume of it. Basically, it can turn down the volume of it. And when the volume of the pain is turned down, then self-essence has more power to move through life, and the brain and the body have a greater chance to heal. When the focus is on the pain, the brain and the body might be struggling to heal because feeling pain causes more stress. But if the volume of the pain can be turned down for a little while, then the brain and the body have a greater chance to go in there and do its thing and help heal and fight off whatever's causing this pain. And in addition, self-essence has more power. Because if there's all of this pain, then self-essence consciousness might be consumed by the pain and have difficulties consciously directing internal energy to focus on anything else. But if we can turn down the volume of the pain at least a little bit, maybe not all the way, but at least a tiny bit, then consciousness has a greater sense of personal power in that moment to move through life. And then the more that power builds on itself, the more it grows. Because then consciousness sees, oh, I do have power. If I just do this with my internal energy, I have a little power, and then it feeds on itself. And then consciousness can expand and expand and expand and expand and expand its own essence and its power and the embodiment of its true self and personal power. So among the infinite potentials is a reduction in the intensity and severity of pain, or an increase in pain management when there might be a need for that. The 9th regulatory protocol that encounters profound transformation is cranial nerve functionality. There's so many different cranial nerves that contribute to so many different aspects of our personal experience, and their ability to function and effectively flow everything from the way that our face naturally engages its own muscles, such as smiling, all the way to regulation of the vagus nerve. All of these different components of the human experience can cultivate healing, restoration, and expanded transformation when effectively and consistently applying these ideas. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments helps to reprogram automated regulation regarding cranial nerve functionality. And this can create change in very unexpected ways. The way that I naturally experience my facial muscles is totally different now than it was several years ago. And one isn't necessarily better or worse than the other. They're just different and unique. I love the non-duality perspective of things. Things are simply different experiences of consciousness, not necessarily better or worse. But the way that my facial muscles naturally engage now is very, very different. And it's really fascinating to explore that. It's very profound. And vagus nerve, totally rewired, reprogrammed. So cranial nerve functionality is another of the regulatory protocols in the brain and the body that are indirectly affected through the consistent and effective application of thesis number 29. All right, number 10, the most profound and incredible and life-changing, transformative, wondrous, shocking, surprising, incredible regulatory protocol that indirectly, without even trying, indirectly encounters expansive total transformation is the regulatory protocol of memory processing. Okay, so in earlier videos exploring thesis number 29, we looked at the storage and the data of existing memories. Okay, that's in the unconscious mind. But in the unconscious body, there are regulatory protocols regarding how those memories get created. Okay, so there's all this existing neural wiring that's impacting navigation, but then styles of brain-body regulation affect how it's gathering new information. Neural activity affects that as well. But specifically, there are regulatory protocols in the brain and the body that are like, hey, this is how we're processing memories, okay, everybody? And this affects short-term working memory and long-term memory, processing and accessibility. There's all these different regulatory protocols. This is one of infinite examples. If you're moving through your day, and you're carrying your phone with you, let's say. You're walking through your house or something, and you randomly set your phone on a table, and you walk away, and you keep moving through your day. And then an hour later, you're like, I wonder where my phone is. The ability for the brain to go back and be like, it's on the table. Because the moment of setting the phone on the table was effectively processed, and now memories are like, hey, here, we can help you navigate because there was effective regulation, so now we were effectively able to interpret experience and provide information for you. Pretty cool, huh? And so if you're walking through life and you set something down somewhere, and then an hour, 2 hours later, or a day later, you're like, I wonder where that thing is. The ability to remember where you set that thing depends on memory processing. If you're reading a book, your ability to connect one sentence with the next sentence depends on memory processing. There's other components involved, like prefrontal cortex engagement. But the ability for the mind to get a piece of information, work it together, here's information, get a piece of information, here's effective navigation, let me help you understand this component of experience, let me help you grab this component of reality, let me help you create a complete complex picture so that you can simply understand this moment of experience you're in. Your ability to navigate morning to afternoon to evening to nighttime consistently and not be like, wait, oh, where am I? I have no idea what I was just doing. All of these different everyday experiences depend on memory processing. And this affects us consciously and unconsciously. And so consciously, there might be short-term working memory of like, I forget why I walked in this room for. I think I was going to get something, but I can't remember. Or there could be more long-term memory issues, like different types of amnesia. I remember Kristen from several years ago, every time she would go to write the date on a piece of paper, a different year would come out. Even though it was 2018, sometimes she would write 2009. Sometimes she would write 2012. Sometimes she would write 2015. Every time she went to write the date on a piece of paper, a different number came out. And it's because there was all this independent activity in neural wiring. And so the brain and the body didn't consistently know and understand orientation in time and space because of all these details of regulatory protocols affecting memory processing and accessibility. The memories were all there, but they weren't connective and effectively being accessed. And so memory processing and accessibility can affect us in so many different ways, short-term and long-term, consciously and unconsciously, in the moment and in the future. There's so many different components. Can we remember things from our life? Can we remember them sequentially? Can we understand our orientation now and in relation to past experiences? Can we remember details effectively? Can we remember things when we want to, but not need to remember things if we don't want to? There's so many different components regarding memory processing and accessibility that are affected by regulatory protocols unfolding beyond awareness in the unconscious body. There are a wide variety of variables that affect memory processing and accessibility. It's a very beautifully miraculous, complex system. But profoundly and astoundingly enough, when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments improves and expands regulatory protocols that affect how memories are created in new moments and how they're accessed from the past. But more importantly, with what we're looking at here, is how new moments are processed in short-term and long-term memory. How our now moments are flowing between each other within our working memory. How we're able to grab something from 5 minutes ago, work it into now, and use that to navigate into the 5 minutes that we're approaching. And how these experiences right here and now are being stored into long-term memories. So a week, a month, a year, 10 years from now, this moment is effectively processed. And what's important stays effectively stored in data. What's not important is discarded or not wired in a weird way, and there's only good information, basically. There's moments of unfulfilled attachment needs in our presently unfolding moments, then that can create memories that could disrupt navigation and or regulation in the future. And so when we are able to improve the regulatory protocol of memory processing, it helps us in so many different ways. Like if you leave your phone on a table and an hour later you don't know where your phone is, you're more likely to be able to remember where you left your phone. If you're reading a book, the ability to fluidly flow and connect sentences and what's actually being said, and to be able to focus and concentrate through the application of the short-term working memory, including with prefrontal cortex engagement and regulation, all of this stuff is going to be improved. The ability to effectively remember all the good things that are happening now is improved. Can you look back a week ago and be like, I remember what I did and it was wonderful? Or are you like, all my days are blurred and I really have no idea what's even happening in my life? The ability for effective memory processing, impacting immediate moments of short-term working memory and future moments regarding long-term memory processing, all of that is improved. 2 years ago, I could not create conscious explicit memories at all. At all. 3 years ago, there were dissociative switches every 30 seconds to 5 minutes, completely disrupting my orientation regarding who I was, where I was, and what was happening. And now, my memory, short-term working memory, long-term memory processing, and all the different ways they affect personal realities. The regulatory protocols regarding automated memory processing in this brain and body work more effectively than they ever have in my entire life. So not just recovered from not being able to create new memories at all, not just recovered from disruption every few seconds to minutes, where Kristen a few years ago would be trying to read a book and 3 words in, she would forget who and where she was and have to start over. I didn't just recover from that, but instead, the memory processing regulatory protocols are so improved that my memory functions better than it ever has. My memory works better than it did when I was a child. My memory works better than it did when I was a teenager. My memory works better than it did when I was an adult before I lost the ability to create new memories. So I didn't just recover from the impossible, but the regulatory protocols affecting memory processing have improved to such a profound degree that my memory works better than it ever has in my entire life. And the reason for that, discovered through my Implicit Revelations case study, directly correlates with daily practices where consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments. While consistent and effective application of thesis number 29 affects a wide variety of regulatory protocols indirectly beyond awareness without directly working with any of these brain-body systems, 3 of the most powerful impacts are found in the autonomic nervous system, the endocrine system, and memory processing. As explored in earlier videos discussing thesis number 29, when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments rewires the entire unconscious body-mind. It reprograms memory data. It indirectly uplifts neural content. And even more importantly and expansively, these processes and practices, when effectively and consistently applied, completely expand neural connectivity so that explicit and implicit neural wiring or memory data can talk to each other, so that neural data from each year of life can fluidly talk to each other. And so neural data throughout the entire neurobiological social engagement system can talk to each other. And this affects navigation regarding personal identity or the sense of self and how that sense of self navigates and interprets reality instinctively and automatically. So it affects automated navigation and reconstruction of implicit memory data, implicit neural wiring, implicit emotional and procedural memories throughout all of life in relation to all the different roles that the neurobiological social engagement system affect so many different components of our personal experience in ways we cannot fully fathom. The complex depth of how we are impacted by this neural wiring is so profound and so expansive, and so much of it happens beyond what we directly perceive. And it's important to explore this so that consciousness has more power within its own self to help heal neural wiring and liberate consciousness to transform personal experience from the inside out. Along with indirectly reconstructing memory data in the most profound way, without working with any memory data, is so incredible. Applying these ideas transforms memory data and neural wiring without directly touching any of it. In addition, not only is navigation transformed for the better, but regulation is transformed for the better. The brain and the body have so many different regulatory protocols, and dozens of them experience an automatic reprogramming of regulation. So you don't have to directly work with these bodily systems to help improve the way that they naturally flow. It's so profound. So in consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself. The process of nurturing internal attachments transforms navigation and regulation in the unconscious body-mind by uplifting neural content, expanding neural connectivity, and reprogramming regulatory protocols. These processes are so fascinating and complex and miraculous and marvelous and astounding, and they impact each other. The way that implicit memories are programmed and then being activated, so the content they carry and the way they're connecting, and then how that activity is impacting new moments, not just having information about past moments, but how that neural content and connectivity is being activated to provide navigation now. That affects regulation. So if there's chronic activation of implicit emotional memories that carry very unpleasant sensations, then there might be dysregulation in the endocrine system, further affecting how we instinctively experience emotions in the body. If there's chronic activation of implicit procedural memories carrying disintegrated action patterns from past moments of unfulfilled attachment needs that might have different stressful action patterns, disintegrated action patterns, that might dysregulate the autonomic nervous system and cause a stress response. So there's all this interaction between implicit memories and regulatory protocols. And then in the other direction, this is how implicit memories affect regulatory protocols, but then regulatory protocols affect how new implicit memories are created. If there's chronic dysregulation in the present moment, then how new experiences are processed and interpreted into implicit memories that affect future navigation is going to be disrupted. So implicit memories and regulatory protocols are constantly impacting each other. And the bridge between the unconscious mind and the unconscious body is attachment systems. And so not only is all this implicit memory data transformed, and not only are all these regulatory protocols transformed, but the interaction between the unconscious mind and the unconscious body focused on implicit memories and regulatory protocols. The way that these realms interplay is positively transformed to continue expanding health and well-being. The navigation's improved, regulation is improved, and as these realms are improved, the interaction of their improved state further expands healing potentials on its own. So consciousness is just up here like, hi, I'm teaching my brain and my body to socially engage with itself while I'm nurturing my own internal attachments. And then beyond awareness, Neural content from every year of life is being uplifted. Explicit and implicit memory data is being connected in new ways. Neural wiring from every year of life is starting to have new connections that didn't exist before. And all the roles within the neurobiological social engagement system start to have an increased ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate so that the different unconscious priorities have a greater sense of integrated balance and harmonious activity. The ability to have and care for emotional intimacy and well-being, physical intimacy and well-being, rest and restitution, mutual support, cooperation, self-associations with your own being, interactions with yourself and each other. All of that depends on the health of this neural data. And so while you're just up here, consciousness, teaching brain, body, socially engaged, nurturing internal attachments, beyond awareness, indirectly, without directly trying at all this neural data is being completely transformed, profoundly impacting navigation. Simultaneously, all these brain-body regulatory protocols are being totally transformed. Brainwaves are starting to increase their automated regulation. The brain hemispheres are starting to connect and communicate, collaborate better. The forebrain and the hindbrain connect better, so there's greater mind-body connectivity. There's increased regulation in the autonomic, somatic, enteric, central nervous systems, the digestive system, respiratory system, immune system. All these different systems are starting to operate more effectively within themselves and regarding their connection with each other. Memory processing improves. Prefrontal cortex engagement improves. The mohawk of self-awareness is increased in its activity. All of this stuff is happening beyond awareness without directly trying. All of these different regions of the brain and the body start to heal and become restored, not just to an okay state, but continually expanding to new depths, new layers, new heights, new levels of thriving. Further expansion into greater realms of health and well-being than had ever been imagined or experienced before. And as navigation in the unconscious mind improves, and as regulation in the unconscious body improves, the transformed state of this continues to interplay with each other and further expand things. As there's increased regulation, there's a greater ability to create new integrated processed memories that affect future navigation. And as this existing navigation is transformed, it's not just helping navigation here, but it's helping regulation. And as regulation continues to improve, then the way that memories are being accessed improves, which further affects regulation, which further affects how new memories are created. And the cycle continues to improve upon itself. Continues to improve upon itself. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing, restoring, nurturing, expanding, and empowering internal attachments completely transforms the entire unconscious body-mind to liberate consciousness by restoring the brain and body to its optimal state of health and well-being, without directly working with any memories, without directly working with any styles of regulation. Effective and consistent application of this idea transforms all of it. And the process of that is fun and enjoyable and easy and tangible and so practical, and it's just genuinely an enjoyable journey. And so instead of reaching into memory data and trying to rewrite it, instead of reaching into regulatory protocols and trying to reprogram it, consciousness can just be up here playing, teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with its own self through a variety of really pleasurable, pleasant, enjoyable, fun practices. And that process changes the game of life by reprogramming the entire vessel that provides consciousness tools to explore life with. And consciousness does not change through the experience. Self-essence never changes anything about itself. Yet it experiences greater depths of liberation by igniting healing homecomings, so more of consciousness can be with its own self in love and presence. And as consciousness expands and unites within itself, the brain and the body start to heal and become restored to the true glory that was always intended to be divinely experienced. The prefrontal cortex is like, what's up? I'm always online. Hey, yo. The brain hemispheres are like, what's up? Hey, right brain. I'm over here in the left brain. That's so cool. We can talk to each other. Radical. Forebrain and the hindbrain are like, hey, what's up? Gonna send you a telegram. You got that message? He's like, yeah, totally. And then the mind and the body are like, woohoo, we're buddies and we get to hang out now. Groovy, man. And the brainwaves are like, sleep, I'm flowing at that perfect pace, ayo. And the digestive system is like, wee! Food to process, here's your energy. The circadian rhythms are like, what's up? It's time to sleep. I'm pumped about this. We're going to have the best night's sleep ever. You're going to wake up feeling great. Hormones and neurotransmitters are like, have all of the feel-good feelings, man. Just feel like your heart is being hugged all of the time, okay? Here's massive amounts of oxytocin, serotonin. While we're at it, all those things that cause stress, we're never going to activate them ever again. Sensory processing becomes lit up, like everything. The whole world just becomes brighter and more vibrant, more wondrous to explore. Navigation and regulation in the unconscious body-mind is forever transformed, further expanding experiences of consciousness. The essence of self becomes liberated as the brain and the body are healed into the wholeness that was always intended to be experienced. Nurturing internal attachments changes the game of life, but specifically when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with its own self through any kind of regular practice. It could be a 5-minute practice once a day, a 2-hour practice once a week, all day, every day, 24/7 practices. When there's any kind of effective and consistent application of this idea, when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, especially with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, everything changes from the inside out. Navigation in the unconscious mind, stemming from neural content and connectivity, is forever transformed without touching any memory data. Transforming automated navigation in the unconscious mind affects everything from instinctive emotional sensations and action patterns or styles of making decisions, all the way through the way that you recognize and resonate with your own face, voice, and body. Transforming automated navigation in the unconscious mind changes so many different regions of life. Navigation in the unconscious mind, stemming from neural content and connectivity, is forever transformed without touching any memory data. Automated regulation in the unconscious body, forever transformed. Regulatory protocols housed deep within the unconsciousness that could never be directly accessed, totally reprogrammed, transformed, empowered, uplifted, expanded. Gradually, but effectively, without touching any of the regulatory protocols. And then as navigation and regulation is transformed, the processing and experiencing of life continues to improve and expand and transform for the better. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments radically reconstructs the entire unconscious body-mind, including the neurobiological social engagement system and all the different regulatory protocols that it affects. The greatest benefit of this, let's see. The greatest benefit in relation, let's see, how do I say that? Or it could affect us more unconsciously, where there are aspects of consciousness far beyond awareness who don't know I don't know what I was just going to say. I don't know. I'm alive. It's weird. Being alive is fucking weird. Being alive is weird. Memory data. Reconstructing neural wiring from every year. Oh, yeah. What did I say? Okay. Anything's possible. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. So quiet. Being alive is weird. I don't know what I'm doing. Can I go to bed? No, we've come this far. Come on, baby. Oh, God. I really don't know if I want to include that. Let's just jump into the good stuff. Okay, now let's dive into the good stuff. The first regulatory protocol that I'm too excited! Stop it! As explored in earlier videos discussing thesis number 29, the process of... Let's see. No, man. Mic drop. I guess that's all.